Hello my fantastic friends! Welcome in another watercolor tutorial. In this video we will paint a rose, a beautiful rose with watercolors. In a previous video we painted the same rose using the same picture, but we did it with a more expressive, quick way. So if you didn't see that video, I will link that down here in the description box, so please check that out. And that was the result. So if you like that, check out the video. So in this video, I will show you another method to paint the same subject, and also I want to give you some tips about the drawing, so how to draw the rose. And as you can see, I'm using this paper which looks a little bit weird with all these signs, and this is actually a sample from Canson. The paper is called MOULIN du ROY, and it's a beautiful watercolor paper which I am testing right now, and if you want to, I can also make a video about this paper. So let's get started, and first I want to start by drawing the rose, and I won't draw the entire subject, so I just want to draw the principal rose, the bigger rose that you see in the picture. And guys, if you want to download this image, you will find that at my Facebook page, and I will link that down here in the description box, so please check out the description box. So this is not actually a drawing tutorial, but I wanted to show you that you need to draw patiently and paying attention to all the details, even if we are not doing a hyper-real drawing. But of course we need to stick to the reality, to what we see in the picture, as much as possible. So guys, my tip is actually this. You want to draw your subject, just flipping the subject upside down. So you want to take the picture and flip it upside down like so, and then draw it. And this will trick your mind, will trick your brain, and you will draw actually the subject in a more precise way. This is a good exercise for beginners and also for everyone, because it makes you understand how your brain actually works, because our brain tends to interpret reality rather than seeing reality for what it is, if it makes sense. So we need to trick our brain, to trick our mind, and this is a good way to do that. So give it a try, and when you do this, let me know, because you will see a little miracle happen when you flip your page after your drawing. You will be like, oh my goodness, this works, because it does. And ta-da! So yeah, it works, and every time is a surprise. In comparing it to the previous one that I made, you can see that they are pretty similar. The perfect drawing would be a mix of the two, but let's paint this. So let's do some watercoloring, and I always start preparing my colors. So I'm using here some alizarin red, some ultramarine blue, and some cadmium red, and I'm kind of mixing them together to get 2 shades of red and a shade of blue, which I will mix with the red to obtain some purples, and then you will see how I do that. So I decided to begin by wetting the central part of the rose with some clear water to do a wet on wet in this area here. This was my choice. You can also wet the whole rose and then paint the whole rose with the first wet on wet layer, and then go on with other couple of layers later. But I decided to paint kind of like petal by petal, so that I would have more control on what I'm doing. And I started with my alizarin red, very diluted, very runny, and I just intensified the shadows, just adding a little bit of ultramarine blue to my red to get this very strong red, and just put a little bit of that in all the spots where there's more darkness. So now I just go on to paint the second petal, and to do that I could also leave the first part that I colored to leave that dry before, but I decided to keep going as it was still wet because I wanted to kind of smudge the edges so that they wouldn't end up to be too rigid, if it makes sense. So you want to keep going and paint your second petal, and as you can see, I'm not painting that just using red again, but I am using a very pale light purple color. And that's because if you observe very closely the original picture, you will notice that it looks pink, but it's not just pink. It has a lot of shades in it. It has kind of a purpley shade and bluish colors, and some brown and some darker spots. And so you need to observe very well reality also when it comes to colors, because they are not just the colors that you think you're looking at. So your brain still tries to trick you, still tries to interpret reality. You see a rosy rose and then you say, oh yeah, that's rose, and you paint that with just one color, but it's not just one color, it's a lot of shades. And then at this point I decided to stop and to dry that using a hair dryer. So I keep going, and here I paint wet on dry because I wanted my colors to be more intense in the center of the rose, because if you look at the picture, they are actually more intense and darker here in this zone in the center of the rose. So I am using pretty much pure alizarin red. And then just keep going and paint the rest of the petals. It's really important not to paint everywhere, but leave some spots white, because they are going to be your lightings. And it's also important to keep balancing the relationship between the colors. So you don't want to paint your rose just with just one color. You want to add more purple and change and keep changing the shade of rose that you are using so that your painting will have much more personality. So now I wanted to speed my drawing a little bit because otherwise it would have been too long and boring, I guess. I don't know. Let me know if you like very long videos. So the next time I won't speed the drawing up. So yeah, let me know what you prefer. So I'm just keep coloring, observing my picture all the time. You need to constantly observe the picture because especially if you want to obtain a realistic painting, it's really important to have something real to observe. So even if it's not a live painting and even if it's from a picture, you need to watch it constantly. Observing the picture, I noticed that the rose has some darker spots here and there. So in my picture, in my drawing, in my painting, what am I saying? Oh, come on, I cannot talk today. I'm not concentrated enough. I'm sorry about my poor English today. But anyway, I decided to add some brown and some brownish gray color here and there. And also sometimes I wet the paper not just with clear water, but using some very pale color like a purple color or a brown color in this case. And that's because I want to create an undertone to my rose. And then I go over that with my alizarin color. So now that's an optional, but if you want to, you can add a very thin and pale layer of color here and there to intensify the shadows, the volumes, and adjusting the color balance and the relationship between colors. But it must be a very pale, thin layer. So the rose is done, and now I wanted to paint the background, which in the original picture is really dark. It looks like a black color, but it's not just a plain black. So I am preparing some black with a little bit of alizarin color in it, and then also a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I am just coloring wet on dry. You can color wet on wet and the result is gonna be different. The wet on wet is softer, it gives you a softer result, so it depends from what you want to obtain. And here I wanted a very strong color, so I opted for a wet on dry technique, but it's up to you. This is a very delicate operation because you don't want to ruin your rose by adding some like splashes of black color onto it. So yeah, pay attention. Otherwise you will be miserable and you will cry, and yeah, I would be miserable and I would cry. I don't know you. At the end, I added some ultramarine blue and some more alizarin to my dark color and intensify here and there to make it even darker. And voila! This is my rose. Done, finished, and as you can see, it looks more realistic than the previous one. So guys, the tutorial ends here. And if you like this, please leave some comments down here, because I really want to know what you think about my tutorials. And of course, if you like this, please leave a thumb up. That is always a pleasure. And remember to subscribe to my channel. And I will see you in my next tutorial next Tuesday. So bye bye, Fantastics. Mwah! Ciao!